We are a country of 1.3 billion plus population, which means that every moment as Indians, we live stories worth 1.3 billion times of repetition. Each one of us sitting in the audience today, each one of us beyond the auditorium today, is living a story that we believe in. As Descartes said, I am because I cogito ergo sum, essentially, which means that we continue to be because of what we think we are. That is the basis of our existence. That is the basis of how we are. And as a nation today, when we are at the cusp of this huge change, generational, social, almost brimming with this young energy, I think we are living stories which are worth recalling, which are worth telling, which are worth sharing, and which are worth reliving time and again. I'm sure most of you follow the trajectory of different events that keep happening in this country. And I'm sure you would remember that this year when the Padma award winners walked up to Rashtrapati Bhavan to receive their awards, I think every Indian swelled with pride. Because we had a Lakshmi Kutti who works in the hinterlands of rural Kerala, who works by preserving the traditional reserve of memory, who works to cure people from snake bites, from different kinds of poisonous reptiles. And this has been her life, her living. That is the story that she believed in. That is the story that she believes in, despite the fact that she might not be as educated as most of us are with her branded degrees. We are reminded of Subhasini Mistry, who despite all the struggles of being a daily wage earner, who despite the fact that the society would have shunned her for the kind of work she did, was instrumental in initiating social change despite all these events which we call as struggle. These are the real change makers in our society. These are the women and the men of our country who have been shaping stories and believing in stories that are negotiated by the same circumstances that we are afflicted with. It's just that their perspective on the stories they choose to believe in has been a little different from what we as a society wanted them to believe in. There is a village in Bihar. I come from Bihar. This village is in a district called Khagadia. And I'm taking the name of this village because I have verifiable stories from this village. The Mushar community in this village, Lachminia, was deprived of something as basic as straw leaves, dry leaves. Every day was a struggle for this community. This community is one of the most deprived communities of our country. You may call them Dalits if you want. You may call them scheduled castes if you want. These are the groups of people who have been marginalized, who have been completely cut off from the mainstream. These are the people who struggled to cook their food. And these are the people today who cook on LPG gas cylinders, who use smokeless chulhas. And we must remember that this is again a story that one leader believed in. This is a story that was told, retold, faith reinstalled in the people, lot of stereotypes broken, and only then, today, Lachminia can claim, can showcase with pride the power of that one story. And that one story was something which was initiated by nothing more than a mere sight of a woman coughing because of the smoke emanating from the traditional chulhas that we used in our households. I think the stories that we want to change the world with are stories that are generated out of a sense of empathy that we have for people we are surrounded with, the people we live with. It was not very easy for Lakshminiya to move out of that circle of ignorance, that circle of lack of basic knowledge, that lack of understanding for what we would reductively call modern living. They had to be told that it is safe to use LPG gas stoves. They were supposed to be told that it is okay if it rains and your cylinder would be safe, your gas stove would be safe. And in this entire process, you can imagine the kind of manpower that was deployed to put Lakshminiya on this radar. There were groups of consultants, there were groups of young entrepreneurs, there were a group of young passionate individuals who just went out into the village to counsel these people and then take that leap of faith. Why I'm saying all this is because as young Indians, we represent today 65% of the 1.3 billion population that we are. And the power of one idea and the power of one story which can move us can be responsible to generate these 1.3 billion stories of change. Therefore, every issue that we read up on, every issue that we feel strongly about is a story which is worth communicating to these 1.3 billion minds. I say this, of course, because of the work I do. I work with communities in different capacities. But prima facie, the power of communication in delivering these stories and in making somebody work on these stories is something that has to be understood for a young, bubbling population that we are. It is important to own an idea that you have. Any idea which is generated out of a genuine goodwill, out of the genuine good feeling you have when you think about an idea and those very basic hormones that trigger those responses in you. What Mr. Philip, one of the TED talkers, called the angel's cocktail. The hormones that induct that thought process in us. That idea is a life-changing idea. And imagine if 1.3 billion life-changing ideas were to reverberate on the scene of this motherland, imagine how much change we all could bring. It is also important to dwell on stories because these are the stories which make us or break us. I'm sure most of us would have heard that oral story that has been transferred from our mothers, grandmothers, and so on and so forth. In a family of an alcoholic father, the two sons chose different paths. One son believed that since my father is an alcoholic, I should also become an alcoholic, or that's the only way of life that I have seen, that I'll continue to repeat this cycle, and ruined his life and the lives associated with him. And the other son chose to believe that because my father was this way, I will not choose to be this way, and chose to disrupt from that cycle, chose to make a change in his life and the lives around him. That is the power of story, and that is why it is important that when we weave our own narratives, when we weave our own stories, we must choose to believe in those, to weave those which will impact lives positively around us. I know this was a cliched story, but most of the time we need to remind ourselves of the cliches as well. Because sometimes at the risk of repeating ourselves, we miss out on the finer details of life, on the finer nuances of life. Imagine if that leader would have chosen to dismiss the idea of a woman in a rural hinterland of India cooking on a smoking chulha. Imagine he would have thought, it's such a cliched topic. It is such a cliche because almost every rural household in India cooks on a smoky chulha. Imagine if that leader would have dismissed this as a cliche. We would not have had the revolution that we see today. I'll give you another example again from Bihar. In Darbhanga district, a man called Anand Jha, very ordinary man like you and I, chose to move out of the family notions and norms of not building a toilet inside a household. And this time I'm choosing an example from not a Dalit community, but from a community which is generally regarded as a community that has emerged out of the head of Brahma, the Brahmin community. This community, not always, but mostly, has codified and has made certain practices very rigid. Among one of those practices has been the idea of not having toilets in the home because toilets are impure and the entire atmosphere of the household becomes impure if you have a toilet in the home. Anand Jha, that change agent, changed that entire perspective, not only built the toilets in his home, but inspired others to do so. This is a story again which reminds us, which should remind us of this power of one voice. This one voice which could rise among one of us. This is not a story of infinite struggle. This is a story of belief. This is not a story where somebody like Subhasini Mistry had to toil day in and day out, have a power of conviction and initiate a change. This is a story of a simple belief. This is a story of a belief in that simple idea that we must not clutch on to systems, beliefs, value systems, which impinge the development or which impinge the progress of a society, of a community, of a family for some rigid idea that we lay claim to. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to leave with this thought, and I would like you also to have this thought in your head. Imagine if all of us believed in that one brilliant idea. Imagine if one believed in that power of that one seed that we have in all of us to change the world for the better. I'm sure we all believe in stories. I'm sure we want to do something, maybe related to our personal lives, related to our social lives, or related to a larger cause we believe in. But imagine if we were to tell those stories. It is important for stories to be told, because it's not just about the tellers all the time. It's about the power of that idea, that power of that word, either written or spoken. Let us all be storytellers as young Indians. Let us all rise up to the occasion, have our ideas translate into action, or at least tell the story of how you would want them to translate into action. With this, I leave you with this thought. Thank you.